Welcome to this explainer. Look, we live in a world that is just saturated with noise, right? Every single day, we're bombarded by notifications, algorithms, and artificial intelligence systems specifically designed to mimic our very own thoughts. But amidst all this technological chaos, we often overlook the ultimate timeless technology, the human mind. Today, we're taking a highly structured journey inward. We are going to decode a truly profound ancient text known as the Mahāvedalla Sutta. This is a dialogue between two foundational thinkers, Venerable Mahā Koṭṭhika and Venerable Sāriputta. And listen, this text isn't just dry philosophy, it is an absolute masterclass in ancient psychology that breaks down exactly how we experience reality. So, here is our roadmap for today's explainer. First, the mind's basic anatomy. Then, wisdom versus consciousness. After that, the five senses and mind, cultivating the right view, deep meditation and existence. And finally, the ultimate deliverance of mind. All right, let's dive right in with Section 1, the mind's basic anatomy. So, how do these ancient thinkers actually define the basic building blocks of our mental experience? Well, we start with a concept called vedanā, which translates to feeling. But hold on, we're not talking about feeling in the emotional sense, like being sad or overjoyed. According to the source, vedanā is literally just the mind's raw, immediate capacity to register an experience. Whenever you encounter absolutely anything, your mind instantly drops it into one of three buckets: pleasure, pain, or neutral. Neither pleasure nor pain. It's basically the baseline reaction of your psychological operating system. Now, what's really fascinating is how the next layer stacks right on top of that raw feeling. This is saññā, or perception. Perception is how our mind labels, categorizes, and remembers all those specific sensory inputs we get from the world. The text uses a really great visual example for this. Saññā is the faculty that lets you recognize and remember colors. Think green, yellow, red, or white. Without saññā, you just have a meaningless stream of raw data. Saññā is what organizes that data into objects you actually recognize. And finally, we have the third piece, viññāṇa, or consciousness. If feeling is the raw data and perception is the labeling of that data, consciousness is the overarching awareness that actually cognizes it all. It's that fundamental knowing that an experience is happening right now. It is literally the light turning on in the room of your mind. Now here is the absolutely crucial point. As Venerable Sāriputta points out in this powerful quote, feeling, perception, and consciousness are totally, hopelessly intertwined. They're conjoined, not separate. You literally cannot hit pause on reality and isolate them. The very second you're conscious of something, you are already perceiving it, and you're already feeling it as pleasant, painful, or neutral. They operate all at once in our moment-to-moment reality. Which brings us to Section 2, wisdom versus consciousness. Okay, so if consciousness and feeling are that deeply mixed together in our everyday experience, how do we actually grow? Well, ancient psychology separates our baseline awareness from true liberating wisdom, and it highlights a subtle but massive difference in how we should handle these two mental faculties. Consciousness, that baseline awareness we just talked about, is an ongoing process that we simply need to observe and fully understand. You don't try to change it, you just watch how it works. But wisdom is totally different. It's not automatic. Wisdom is a tool that has to be actively developed and cultivated. You use it to penetrate complex truths, like figuring out the root of suffering. So one is observed, the other is built. Having mapped out the internal architecture, we transition perfectly into Section 3, the five senses and mind. Let's talk about how we physically interface with the outside world. We have five distinct physical faculties, right? The eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, and the body. And the source text points out a really fascinating constraint here. These five senses have completely independent domains. They cannot experience each other's inputs at all. Your eyes can't hear music, and your ears definitely cannot taste an apple. They operate in total silos. So if they're all in their own silos, how do we experience a unified reality? Well, to process these entirely separate signals, the mind, or mano, steps in as the central hub. The text beautifully describes the mind as the refuge for these five physical senses. Think of it as Grand Central Station. It takes the visual data, the audio data, the tactile data, and weaves the whole shebang together into the single, seamless movie of reality that you are experiencing at this exact second. But these physical faculties need energy to function. To explain how our physical and sensory systems stay alive, the text uses this incredibly evocative analogy. It says that our physical vitality, our life force, and our internal bodily heat are completely interdependent. It's just like the flame and the light of an oil lamp. You can't have the light of the lamp without the flame, and the flame doesn't exist without generating light. Our life and our physical energy are locked in that exact same inseparable dance. Understanding all that is great, but it's really only half the battle. Let's move to section 4, cultivating the right view. So, how do you actually program a mind to see reality clearly? The text outlines 2 absolute prerequisites for what it calls right view to arise. Step 1 is totally external, learning and hearing from others. We've got to take in new, accurate information. But as you might guess, that's not enough on its own. Step 2 is internal, applying wise, appropriate attention. You have to take that external knowledge and actively, intelligently apply it to your own internal experience. Basically, you have to do the work. And once that right view is established, it doesn't just sit there doing nothing. It gets supported and propelled forward by 5 progressive, compounding factors. It's nurtured by basic virtue, deepened by further learning, sharpened by active discussion, steadied by mental tranquility, and then finally illuminated by insight. When these 5 elements lock together, they drive the mind straight toward ultimate liberation. With that right view cultivated, the mind gains access to profound states of stillness. That brings us to section 5, deep meditation and existence. As the mind starts abandoning sensory desires and all those unskillful chaotic traits, it enters a highly concentrated state known as the first jhana. And listen, this isn't some spacey trance. It's actually a state of hyper-clarity. It's anchored by 5 specific factors: directed thought, which is focusing the mind on one object; evaluation, which is examining that object; rapture and pleasure, which are these really profound states of internal joy and ease; and finally, singleness of mind, complete unshakable focus. Now, just to prove how profound this mental stillness can actually get, the source offers a fascinating contrast. It compares a deceased person with a master meditator who is in the ultimate state of cessation. For a dead person, vitality is lost, heat is lost, and the sensory faculties are completely broken. But for the meditator whose mind is entirely stopped in deep cessation, well, even though their breathing and thoughts might have stilled, their vitality is totally present. Their internal heat remains, and their faculties aren't just intact, they're actually described as exceptionally clear and radiant. It is a state of absolute pure potential. And this builds perfectly to our final section, ultimate deliverance of mind. So what is the actual end goal of analyzing our feelings, refining the mind, and hitting these deep states? The text concludes that surpassing all other meditative achievements is something called the unshakable deliverance of mind. This is a state where the mind is just completely and permanently emptied of greed, hatred, and delusion. The text uses this very specific, striking metaphor. It says these negative traits are eradicated so deeply that their roots are cut off like a palm tree stump, meaning they are fundamentally unable to ever grow back. It's literally a permanent upgrade to the human operating system. Which brings us right back full circle. As we spend our days endlessly interacting with algorithms and machines that simulate thought, it really begs a vital question. In an era where AI perfectly mimics consciousness, have we mastered our own human minds enough to find this measureless, unshakable peace within? I'll leave you with that provocative thought to consider as you continue your own journey inward. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and hey, pay attention to your own brilliant mind.